She smiled when she handed him the menu. He laughed when he saw her name tag. "You should be grateful you have a job," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. But what he didn't know was that the woman serving his coffee was the same CEO his company had been begging to meet. And when he finally pulled out his business card, the world turned upside down. This is the story of a waitress, a businessman, and one moment that changed everything. The diner was half empty that afternoon, the kind of place that smelled like coffee, rain, and fried chicken. A small bell jingled over the door every time someone came in, but no one paid much attention to it anymore. Except her. Naomi worked every table with the same quiet energy. She didn't rush, didn't drag her feet. She moved like someone who'd already lived 3 lives and learned to smile through all of them. Her uniform was plain, black apron, white shirt, hair tied back neatly. Her hands were small but steady, the kind of hands that carried plates and dreams with the same care. She didn't know it yet, but today was going to change her life. The door opened again, and the sound of rain followed a tall man inside. He wore an expensive suit, the kind that looked allergic to diners. His shoes were polished, his watch gleamed under the flickering light, and his phone was glued to his ear. Naomi looked up and smiled. "Welcome to Jerry's Diner. Table for 1. He didn't answer. He just waved his hand as if she were background noise. He kept talking into his phone, walking past the empty booths until he stopped at the corner table, the one with a clear view of the street. She followed quietly, menu in hand. "Sir, would you like coffee to start?" He finally glanced up. His eyes were sharp, cold, the kind of look that sliced before it spoke. "Just bring me bottled water, and make sure it's cold. Not tap." Naomi nodded. "Of course." When she walked away, he sighed into his phone. "Yeah, I'm stuck in some greasy diner, waiting for the rain to stop. It's disgusting. The people here," he paused, lowering his voice, but not enough. "It's like poverty with a price tag." Naomi heard him. She always did, but she learned not to react. She came back with the water and placed it gently on the table. "Your menu, sir." He didn't take it. He just kept scrolling through his phone, then said, "Just get me a burger. Whatever's quickest. No pickles, no onions. And don't overcook it." Naomi smiled. "No problem. Anything else?" "Yeah," he said, finally meeting her eyes. "Bring it fast. I don't plan to spend my afternoon watching you walk in circles." Her smile didn't fade. "I'll be right back." She walked to the kitchen. Inside, the old cook, Jerry, raised an eyebrow. "Rough one." Naomi shrugged. "Another man in a hurry." Jerry grunted. "You ever notice it's always the ones wearing suits who got no patience?" Naomi chuckled softly. "They're the ones who forgot how to wait." 10 minutes later, she carried his plate out. He didn't thank her. He didn't even look up. He just kept typing something on his laptop, probably another deal, another email, another plan to buy something no one needed. Naomi turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Excuse me." She turned. "Yes, sir." He pointed at the plate. "Is this the kind of service you people think is acceptable?" Her heart skipped. "Is something wrong with your order?" He leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "You brought the burger without the condiments. No ketchup, no mustard, nothing. You expect me to eat a dry sandwich." Naomi looked at the table, then back at him. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'll fix that right away." "Unbelievable," he muttered. "You'd think in a place like this they'd at least train the staff properly." She walked away again, her shoulders tight. At the counter, she grabbed a small tray with condiments, hands trembling slightly. She'd been called worse, but the tone, that tone of superiority, it always stung the same way. When she came back, she placed the ketchup and mustard on the table. "There you go, sir." He didn't say thanks. He just smirked. "You know, if you ever want to work somewhere better, you might try learning some real customer service skills. You'd last 5 minutes in a real restaurant." Naomi didn't reply. She only smiled quietly. "Thank you for your feedback, sir." He chuckled, shaking his head. Unbelievable. A few minutes later, she saw him finish his burger and push the plate aside. He signaled for the check. Naomi brought it over. He looked at the total and scoffed. $30 for this? What a joke. He pulled out his wallet, thick, heavy, and placed a few bills on the table. Not a tip, just enough to pay. As he stood to leave, he said under his breath, "Guess some people are meant to serve, huh?" Naomi froze for a heartbeat. Then she turned, still smiling. Have a wonderful afternoon, sir. He walked out without another glance. But what Naomi didn't see was that he'd left his business card behind, face down, half under the receipt. And when she picked it up later, she read the name and stopped breathing. Jonathan Reed, CEO, Reed Global Investments. The same company she'd been trying to pitch for months. The one her startup had built everything around. The man who just mocked her was the one deciding her future, and he didn't even know who she was. That night, Naomi sat by her small apartment window, staring at the city lights. Her hands were still faintly trembling. She had dealt with rude customers before, but something about him stayed in her chest like a bruise. Jonathan Reed, Reed Global Investments. She whispered the name aloud, as if saying it would make the universe explain itself. He was the man she had spent 6 months preparing to meet, the gatekeeper to the biggest contract her young company had ever chased. Only he didn't know it, because when he saw her, he didn't see a businesswoman. He saw a waitress in a cheap apron. Naomi looked at the business card again. The edges were glossy, gold-trimmed, powerful. It looked like it belonged to someone who had never been ignored. She placed it on her desk beside a pile of notebooks and sketches. Her dream project, the Harvest Box, a line of sustainable meal kits sourced from Black-owned farms and small businesses. She had turned her grandmother's recipes into data sheets and delivery models, believing she could change how communities ate and earned. Tomorrow, she was supposed to present her pitch to Reed Global's board. Now she wondered if she should even go. She closed her eyes, breathing in slowly. Her grandmother's voice came back, soft, steady. Child, storms don't ask permission. You just hold your ground and let the rain teach you. Naomi opened her laptop and started polishing her slides again. The next morning the sky was clean, as if the night's rain had rinsed the city of arrogance. Naomi wore her one good suit, gray, modest, perfectly pressed. She tied her hair back, added a thin gold bracelet, and took a deep breath before walking into the towering glass building with Reed Global written across the front. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors, chrome elevators, hushed voices. The receptionist smiled politely. Name, please. Naomi Cole. I have a meeting with Mr. Reed's investment team. The receptionist checked her tablet. Yes, conference room 14B. They're expecting you. Naomi nodded, her pulse steady but fast. As she stepped into the elevator, she saw her reflection in the mirrored wall. For a moment, she saw the waitress, the apron, the tired smile, and she whispered to herself, "You are more than how they see you." When the elevator doors opened, she found herself in a wide hallway lined with glass offices. A young assistant guided her inside the conference room. Please wait here. Mr. Reed is finishing another call. Naomi set up her laptop, breathing through the silence. Then the door opened, and the same man from the diner walked in. No phone this time, no rain. Just confidence, the same suit, the same careless smile. Jonathan Reed froze for a split second when he saw her. His brows knit together. You? Naomi met his stare calmly. Good morning, Mr. Reed. He blinked, uncertain. Wait, you work here now? She shook her head gently. No, I'm the founder of the Harvest Box. I'm here to present our proposal to your company. His jaw tightened. He laughed, short, awkward, disbelieving. Hold on, you're the waitress from that diner yesterday. Yes, and now you're telling me you're, what, the CEO? That's right. He chuckled again, louder this time, glancing at his assistant as if to share the joke. You're serious? Naomi's voice stayed calm. Completely. He leaned against the table, crossing his arms. This is wild. You expect me to believe that someone serving burgers one night is running a company the next. Naomi's hands rested neatly on her laptop. It's not the next day, Mr. Reed. It's the same day. Some of us work more than one job to build what we believe in. His smile faltered just a little, but pride didn't let him drop the mask. All right, Miss Cole. Impress me. Let's see what this big idea is. Naomi clicked to the first slide. Colorful photos filled the screen. Smiling farmers, fresh produce, maps of distribution hubs. She spoke with quiet confidence, explaining how her startup connected local growers to urban families, cutting food waste and empowering small Black communities. Jonathan listened with half an ear at first, still sizing her up. But the more she spoke, the quieter he became. Her numbers made sense. Her vision was clear. Her model was sustainable. This wasn't charity, it was smart business. When she finished, she closed her laptop and looked up. That's our plan. We're seeking investment to scale nationwide. Jonathan tapped his pen on the table, trying to recover his authority. Well, he said slowly, you've got heart, but this market is tough. Investors look for proven founders, and, let's be honest, you don't fit the typical profile. Naomi nodded once. You mean I don't look like what you expect a CEO to look like? He hesitated. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Their eyes met, calm versus discomfort. Before he could answer, another executive entered the room. Jonathan, the board's ready. He stood relieved. We'll be in touch, Miss Cole. Naomi rose too. Thank you for your time. As he reached for the door, he stopped. By the way, that diner could use better service. She smiled faintly. Maybe next time you'll bring better manners. He froze for a second, then walked out without another word. Naomi exhaled. She didn't know whether she had just ruined her chance or sparked something deeper. Either way, she'd said what needed to be said. That evening, Jonathan couldn't stop thinking about her. Her voice, her poise, the way she looked him straight in the eye without anger or apology. He replayed the scene in his mind, the diner, the business card, the pitch. For the first time in a long while, he felt something uncomfortable, shame. Jonathan Reed's office sat high above the city, all glass and shine. At night, it looked like he floated over the world he thought he owned. But that night, he didn't feel powerful. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman from the diner. He had met thousands of entrepreneurs. They all talked big. Yet there was something about Naomi Cole he couldn't shake. Her voice had been calm, but certain. Her facts were sharp. Her eyes never looked away. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder from the meeting. The harvest box. He skimmed her deck again. Then he saw something he had missed, the supplier map. Most of the names on that map weren't companies. They were families. Small farms in Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, and the Carolinas. All Black-owned. Jonathan stared at the screen. He realized she wasn't selling food. She was building a bridge. He leaned back, silent. For the first time in months, he felt small. The next morning, he called his assistant. Find everything you can about the harvest box and Naomi Cole, he said. By noon, a file lay on his desk. He opened it and started reading. Naomi, 32. Master's degree in business administration. Founder of Harvest Box 2 years ago. Still worked nights at a diner to fund operations. Her company had already won a regional award for sustainability. Customers loved her program. Investors ignored it. Jonathan rubbed his temples. He had seen this pattern before, but he had never been the man standing on the wrong side of it. He reached for his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. His mentor, Arthur Clay. Jonathan, the older man's voice came through, rich and calm. Haven't heard from you since your last IPO. I need your opinion, Jonathan said. About a startup. Arthur chuckled. You never call for opinions, only numbers. What's different? Jonathan hesitated. She's different, he said softly. Smart, driven, but I misjudged her. Badly. Arthur stayed quiet for a beat. Then, so what are you going to do? Jonathan sighed. I don't know. Arthur said, if you want to do right by someone, don't send an email. Go look them in the eye. Jonathan hung up and stared out at the skyline. He didn't like the feeling of regret, but it was there, heavy and honest. The next day, Naomi returned to her usual shift at the diner. Business was slow. Rain drummed on the windows again. She tried not to think about the meeting. Halfway through her shift, the bell over the door jingled. She turned and froze. Jonathan Reed stood there. No phone, no laptop, no arrogance. Just a man with wet shoes and a small envelope in his hand. He walked up to the counter. Naomi, he said quietly. May I sit? She blinked. You remember my name? I do now. He sat down, folding his hands. I owe you an apology. Naomi stayed behind the counter, unsure. For what exactly? For yesterday. For the diner. For every word I said. She studied him. You remember those words pretty clearly. He nodded. Too clearly. For a moment, the only sound was the coffee machine. Jonathan took a slow breath. I reviewed your proposal, and I realized something. You're not asking for charity. You're offering something powerful. Naomi didn't reply. He reached into the envelope and slid a card across the counter. Not his own, hers. It was her Harvest Box business card, but embossed in silver. On the bottom, a new line had been added. In partnership with Reed Global Investments. Naomi frowned. What is this? I've approved your proposal, he said. Personally, we're offering funding, distribution, and mentorship. Naomi's heart raced. Why? You made it clear you didn't believe in me. Jonathan met her eyes. I didn't believe in myself, either. I forgot what respect looked like. You reminded me. Naomi looked down at the card again. The silver letters shimmered under the fluorescent light. She whispered, You really did this? He nodded. I did, and I'd like to do more, if you'll let me. Naomi took a step back, overwhelmed. You could have just sent an email. I wanted to look you in the eye, he said, repeating his mentor's words. For the first time, she saw something real behind his polished surface. Not pity, not guilt, just truth. Naomi exhaled. I accept the partnership, she said finally. But not the apology yet. Jonathan smiled faintly. Fair enough. As he stood to leave, he glanced around the diner. Same tables, same smell of coffee. But it felt different now, like the place where a story had begun. That night, Naomi sat again by her window, staring at the city lights. She held the new business card in her hand. This time, her hands didn't tremble. Sometimes life flipped its own script. Sometimes the person who looked down on you ended up looking up instead. 2 weeks later, Naomi walked through the glass doors of Reed Global Headquarters. The same man who once laughed at her now waited by the elevator with a coffee in hand. Morning, Jonathan said, trying to sound casual. She nodded. Morning. You drink coffee here too, huh? He smiled faintly. Only fair. They rode up in silence, the hum of the elevator filling the air. Naomi's reflection stared back from the mirrored wall. A black woman in a navy suit she'd borrowed from a friend, shoulders straight, eyes fierce. She wasn't the waitress anymore. When the doors opened, the view hit her. A wide office lined with glass, marble, and cold air. People moved like they were made of time and money. Some looked at her. Some didn't. Jonathan gestured to his team. Everyone, this is Naomi Cole, the founder of Harvest Box. She'll be joining us as a partner. The room went still. One man whispered, That's the woman from the diner? Another said, quietly, She's the partner? Naomi heard them. She just smiled. She'd learned that silence sometimes cuts louder than words. Jonathan cleared his throat. Let's get to work. The meeting began. Charts, slides, numbers. Naomi spoke with calm authority, explaining the model. Farm-to-home delivery boxes, each featuring local black farmers. Sustainably packed, profit shared, and data tracked. One executive leaned forward. It's ambitious but small scale. How do you expect to compete with national chains? Naomi replied, By being real. People don't trust faceless brands anymore. They want food that feels human. Her words hit the table like truth. Jonathan watched her, not as a waitress, not as charity, but as a leader. After the meeting, he said quietly, You were incredible. Naomi replied, I was the same person yesterday. You just changed where I was standing. He nodded, humbled. Weeks passed. The partnership took off. Naomi's company grew faster than anyone expected. Her face appeared in magazines. Investors called. Journalists called. But not everyone was happy. Some of Jonathan's board members whispered behind closed doors. She's changing the brand. She's too bold. She's using him for his platform. One day, Jonathan walked into a board meeting to find tension thick in the air. Greg, a senior partner, slammed a file shut. This is risky, Jonathan. A charity project doesn't belong in our portfolio. Jonathan's voice hardened. It's not charity. It's innovation. Greg shot back. It's emotion. You're blinded by guilt. Jonathan's jaw tightened. I'm guided by results. And hers are real. Naomi walked in just then, catching the last words. Her voice was calm, but sharp. Don't talk about me like I'm not in the room. Greg blinked. We're just discussing business. Then let's keep it business, Naomi said. She opened her tablet and displayed the numbers. Sales up 43% in 2 months. Customer retention above industry average. You want results? Here they are. The room went quiet. Greg smirked. You talk well, Miss Cole, but you should remember who's in charge here. Naomi smiled slowly. I do. The market. And right now, it's listening to me. Even Jonathan had to hide a smile. After the meeting, he caught up with her in the hallway. You didn't have to take him down like that, he said softly. Yes, I did, she replied. Every time I stay quiet, someone writes my story for me. Jonathan looked at her for a long moment. He realized she wasn't just rebuilding her business. She was rewriting the script for everyone who'd ever been underestimated. That night, Naomi walked home through the city rain. Headlines glowed on a digital billboard. Waitress turned CEO shakes up corporate culture. She smiled, but behind her calm was exhaustion. Being the first meant always being tested. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. Proud of you, baby, but don't let them change your heart. Naomi exhaled, whispering, I won't, Mama. At the same time, in his penthouse office, Jonathan stared at the same headline. He had spent years being the man who had it all. Now he was realizing what he'd lost along the way. Respect, empathy, truth. He texted her one line. Dinner tomorrow. My treat. Business and peace talk. She replied, only if it's at my diner. He smiled. Deal. The next evening, the diner buzzed like old times. The same smell of grilled onions and coffee hung in the air. The same checkered floor that had seen her struggle now reflected her heels. Naomi pushed open the door and looked around. Everything felt smaller now, but warmer too. She saw Miss Carla at the counter, wiping down mugs. Baby, look at you, Carla shouted, laughing. Naomi hugged her tight. Told you I'd be back. Carla grinned. You didn't say you'd come back famous. Before Naomi could answer, the bell above the door jingled again. Jonathan walked in, same suit but softer eyes. People noticed him instantly. The room went quiet. Carla raised an eyebrow. Is that who I think it is? Naomi smiled. Yes, but tonight, he's just a customer. They sat in the same booth where everything had started. For a moment, neither spoke. It was strange how life can twist back on itself. Jonathan looked around. I never realized how much life a place like this holds. Naomi poured coffee for him out of habit. You didn't have to. You never stayed long enough to see it. He nodded. Fair. A few customers whispered. Phones came out. Some recorded, pretending not to. The rich man and the waitress, again, but different this time. Jonathan leaned forward. Naomi, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you acknowledgement. You didn't just teach me about business. You taught me about humanity. Naomi looked out the window. I didn't set out to teach anyone. I just wanted to be treated with respect. He swallowed. That's what haunts me. You gave me grace after what I did. Grace isn't free, she said softly. It costs something from both sides. He nodded, his voice low. Then I want to earn it. They talked for hours about the business, their past, and the people who never get seen. Naomi told him about the farmers she worked with. How most of them have been ignored by big buyers because of their zip codes or last names. Now, she said proudly, they're supplying schools, hospitals, even luxury hotels. Jonathan smiled. You're changing lives. She met his gaze. That's the goal. Not just money. Impact. A waitress walked over. A young black girl with bright eyes and nervous hands. Miss Naomi, she said quietly. I just wanted to say, you're the reason I'm working here. You made me believe I can do more than just serve tables. Naomi smiled, her voice soft. You already are doing more. Just keep showing up. Jonathan watched the exchange and felt something shift deep inside him. He realized that this was leadership, not sitting in a glass office, but lifting others as you rise. As they left the diner, a small crowd had gathered outside. Reporters, curious onlookers, social media fans. Flashlights blinked. Someone shouted, Naomi, is it true you used to work here? She smiled and answered simply, still do sometimes. The cameras clicked wildly. Jonathan stepped aside as she spoke. For once, he wasn't the center of attention, and he liked it that way. Later that night, a video from the diner went viral. CEO returns to her old job for dinner. Teaches billionaire a lesson in humility. Millions watched, commented, shared. But behind the headlines was something deeper. A man learning to see, and a woman realizing the world finally saw her. The next day, Naomi got a call from her assistant. "Ma'am, we're flooded with partnership requests from universities, community groups, even government programs. Everyone wants to work with you." Naomi smiled, though her heart was calm. "Then let's make sure we choose the ones that help the most people, not the richest." Meanwhile, Jonathan sat in his office, staring at the news reports. He had become a silent witness to his own transformation. The man who once laughed at a waitress now quoted her in board meetings. When Greg, the partner who doubted Naomi, walked in, Jonathan said, "You see this? That's the future. If we can't work like her, we don't deserve to lead." Greg sighed. "She's impressive. I'll give you that." Jonathan smiled. "Impressive isn't the word. She's right." That evening, Jonathan went to the rooftop of his building. The city lights stretched endlessly below. He thought about how arrogance had made him blind for years. A voice behind him said, "Deep thoughts?" Naomi was there, smiling. He chuckled. "You always know when I'm thinking too much." She stood beside him. "I was just passing by. Thought you might need reminding. That change isn't something you own. It's something you live." He turned to her. "Then I'll keep living it." She smiled softly. "Good, because I'm not done changing things yet." They laughed, two people who'd started from opposite worlds, now standing side by side under the same sky. A year passed. Naomi's company, Harvest Box, was everywhere. Billboards, podcasts, news shows. The slogan, "Food with a face and a story," became a national phrase. Children in schools unpacked her boxes for lunch. Farmers sent her handwritten notes. Single mothers found jobs in her distribution centers. But Naomi still woke up every morning and drank coffee from the same chipped mug she used at the diner. It kept her grounded. That morning, she was headed to a major awards event, the Business Visionary Gala. Jonathan was there too, nominated in another category. It would be the first time they were both recognized on the same stage. When Naomi entered the ballroom, cameras flashed. She walked with quiet grace, not in diamonds, but in dignity. As the speeches began, the host's voice filled the hall. "This year's award for excellence in social innovation goes to Naomi Cole, CEO of Harvest Box." The crowd erupted in applause. Jonathan stood first, clapping harder than anyone. Naomi stepped onto the stage. She took a breath, looking out at hundreds of powerful people, many of them the same kind of men who once looked through her, not at her. She began softly. "When I was a waitress, I used to pour coffee for people who never saw me. They saw my uniform, not my name. My color, not my story. But every person you ignore still carries a dream. Every person you underestimate might be building something bigger than your world allows." The room went silent. Some people nodded, some wiped their eyes. She continued, "I don't stand here because I fought harder. I stand here because one moment of injustice reminded me what I'm worth. And because sometimes, even arrogance has a purpose. It forces you to prove who you already were." She paused, looked directly at Jonathan, and smiled. "And to the man who once made me feel small, thank you. You taught me what real power isn't." The crowd erupted in applause again. Jonathan smiled humbly, standing and bowing slightly, acknowledging her truth. Naomi finished with one line that would echo across the internet. "Respect isn't something you give to titles. It's something you give to people." After the event, journalists swarmed her. She gave short answers, smiled, and slipped away before the flashlights swallowed her. Outside, the city glowed gold. She stood on the steps, holding her award, when Jonathan joined her. "You really said it," he said softly. "I meant it," she replied. He nodded. "I deserved every word." She looked at him. "Maybe. But what matters is what you do next." He smiled faintly. "Already started. I sold my private jet last week." She laughed. "You? What?" "Used the money to start a scholarship fund," he said, "for hospitality workers who want to study business. Named it the Naomi Cole Initiative." She blinked, stunned. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," he said quietly. "You reminded me what leadership means." For the first time, Naomi felt the weight of forgiveness lift completely. They stood there in silence for a moment, watching cars pass by. Then Naomi said, "You know, the diner's still open. I was thinking of buying it." He grinned. "Of course you are." 2 months later, she did. On reopening day, the sign above the door read, "Harvest Diner. Everyone deserves a seat." Inside, old photos lined a wall, snapshots of farmers, waitresses, janitors, and builders. Real people, real stories. Miss Carla still managed the counter. "Naomi, baby, look at this place. It's beautiful." Naomi smiled. "It's home." She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, looking out at the street. A group of kids walked by, laughing, carrying lunchboxes with her company's logo. Jonathan arrived a little later, casual clothes this time. He took a seat across from her and said, "Mind if I order the usual?" Naomi grinned. "You remember what that is?" He smiled. "Black coffee, no cream, and a second chance." She laughed. "Coming right up." Hours later, as the diner closed and the lights dimmed, Naomi stood by the door. She looked around. The same walls, the same laughter, but a whole new story. Once, she had been invisible here. Now, she was the reason it was shining again. She whispered to herself, "Full circle." And in that small, quiet moment, Naomi understood something she'd never said out loud. Success isn't revenge. It's the ability to rise without needing to step on anyone else. The camera fades out on Naomi walking through the diner, turning off lights one by one. The last bulb goes dark, leaving only the glow of the sign outside. Harvest Diner. Everyone deserves a seat.